end.
So I'll start out just calling upon the Human Rights Act here in Minnesota. And the Human Rights Act was focused on sexual orientation and offering protections and recognitions relative to that part of human identity. And here we are calling for recognition of gender identity. And really I think we're building the next iteration of what the Human Rights Act was intending to do in terms of protections for people in general and certainly for young people in schools, where we hope that they can be students in all the ways that young people are students through their school day. Short history relative to offering up protections to people of all gender and sexual identities. And so we've got a little bit of information here about Minnesota's work in the past. So a 2011 decision, Goins versus West Group, relative to employers not required to assign facility use based upon biological sex. That's a key thing that we're focused on here. And then an appellate court decision, Cruson versus Special School District 1, a 2002 ruling relative to transgender people's use of bathrooms, not meriting status of hostile work environment. Or in other words, that it really wasn't recognized as creating negative impact on staff members. And then the lead up to today, the Department of Education at the federal level and the Department of Justice making their proclamations just a short couple of years ago relative to protecting people of all gender identities safely using bathrooms in the schools that they're attending. And it was anchored quite heavily on Title IV, and also Title IX got caught up in that too. So what we turned to was Minnesota Department of Education's guidance offered in their toolkit for serving students of all gender identities. And they're focused on trying to make sure that facilities are safe for all students, regardless of their identity, and to decrease the instances where young people are stigmatized just for being themselves and needing to do a normal activity in the course of a school day, like use a bathroom. And so their focus at the time that they put out their recommendation was on young people objecting to trans-identified or gender nonconforming students using bathrooms, and we're taking a little bit different, perhaps more broad look at that as a way to move toward best practice that can be enduring. So their guidance was suggesting that gender nonconforming students should be given the opportunity to use the bathrooms of their choice. They make the point that many schools are turning to single stall bathrooms as a way to create an effective solution, and indicating that repurposing existing restrooms has been a common approach up to this point. And we'll comment on new construction too. There's kind of a different way to go about it there, but repurposing can be relatively simple and inexpensive if certain infrastructure is already in place.
Yep. And the team really wanted to take this in consideration and take a responsible approach to this fiscally as well, in terms of what is something that we can accomplish that is not going to cost tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars. And so that's part of where the assessment comes in. We did get a picture of St. Paul Public School. Johnson High School actually redid their bathrooms, and they actually have many single stall bathrooms. So you can see in the picture they have a very different design than what we have. We understand that the cost to go to something like this would be quite expensive. We just had a lot of construction projects done in the last decade, so this is not maybe the option we want to do, but something we still want to highlight, that this is not just us saying this. This is statewide, where people are moving in a direction of best practices, and we want to bring Duluth into the best practices that we can as well. So in going through this, we wanted to go through the T form. We thought that was very important. We want to consider how our current bathroom configurations affect students, visitors, and staff. So we analyzed the different groups that were impacted by this decision. We went through those various groups, examining the positive, neutral, and harmful impacts of each of those groups. We worked with students, and Allison's not here today, but she did a lot of work at the student level to talk to them, to gather feedback, to get input from people at Denfeld to determine what could be some next steps and some proposed solutions and how different decisions might impact them. The question that I wanted to highlight is how will this decision advance equity, address structural barriers, and reduce or eliminate disparities? The group was unanimous in feeling that this would increase safety for students. It would increase class time, reduce the psychological impact and threat of physical harm or of self, increase tolerance, model best practices, and increase a self and welcoming environment for students, staff, and community members. As Allison met with students, we heard stories of students having to have lookouts. While MDE guidance says that anybody can walk into a bathroom at any time, the reality of that in a student's world is quite different. So for them to be able to feel comfortable going to bathrooms, sometimes they'd have lookouts, and they would text each other when the bathroom is empty, and then they would see if they could get a pass and get down there. Students would wait for other students to go to class and then wait till the bell rings, then use the restroom, being late to class. Some students who did want to use a bathroom, which would be such as the nurse's office, if they have a class, third floor, far end, they've got to go across the room down 3 floors, use the restroom, and then return. And that's if there's nobody else using the restroom at that time. So we think that not only is this great for students and who they are and feeling more inclusive, we think there's an academic impact as well here. And getting students to class in a timely manner is another piece that this will address.
And I'll just add the physiological impact too. We hear from some students that they just choose not to drink fluids in the morning so they can hold it all day and go when they get home.
So proposed solutions. We took a look at our current resources, we took a look at our current facilities and said, is there any way we can have more single-use bathrooms? The reason for this, again, is that students wouldn't have to travel as far. They would have some options during passing time. And Denfeld really is set up pretty well to address this, and we were pretty excited as we were looking into this further. We're also looking at gender signage for the single-use bathrooms and the location of those bathrooms, making these available before and after school, available to guests. If you're a community member who's coming in and needs a restroom to use, what they're dealing with some of those same issues that we talked about with students, and we want to make sure that we're responsive there. So we really thought that this could be played out for both staff, community, and for our students. So the process we went through was to assess the facilities. So include the GSA advisors, students, building administrators, and facilities. We analyzed many different cost options, and this took some time because we were trying to do a really good job with this, and we wanted to come with you with a proposal that we felt was feasible and actionable. We wanted to gain the required approval, and today we're looking for your support in this and feedback, securing funding and request work. There will also be some education that may need to happen with students, staff, and the community as well. So we decided a 3-phase approach, really focusing on our secondary schools, and Denfeld is really the first of those. Denfeld, we did an assessment already, and we'd like to complete the work towards the end of the year here or in the fall. Gather feedback on that, and then make adjustments. So that would be the process we would use at Denfeld. During this school year, we'd like to assess East and make ask the same questions over there, analyze their facility, work to come up with a plan on how we could make more gender-inclusive bathrooms there, complete the work, and then gather feedback again and make adjustments based on that. For the following school year, in 2020, we'd want to be doing some of that, so looking at our middle schools as well. We don't have a current plan for elementary schools. We'd want to consider that. We want to do our secondaries first, and then we want to see where we're at with that process. Just based on size and location, there might be some different answers, and depending on the sites. So here's phase 1. On the first floor, there would be a gender-neutral bathroom located outside the office. You can see there's the common areas up there above to give you kind of a sense of where you're looking. There are some bathrooms in that area. We would be adding a gender-neutral bathroom into this location. It is already an existing single-use bathroom. It would not be new construction. The only changes would be some signage and some locks, and we already have those. We've checked the facility, so really it's just a labor cost. There's not a parts cost on this, so it's a very low-cost option for our students. On the second floor, up by the computer lab, around room 2311 and 2216, there is a bathroom there, which is not actually utilized that much right now. And that could be repurposed, relocked, and put some updated signage to give students access to a gender-neutral bathroom on the second floor, as well on the third floor directly above it. This would give us an option on all three levels, and then there's also the nurse's office, which has been the traditional place where a gender-neutral bathroom could be located. So this would give us 4 gender-neutral bathrooms throughout the school in addition to our other sites. We have talked with administrators and talked about para-training and hall monitor training on how that would look and making sure that would be safe, and we do feel confident that we can make that very safe. And we can support our staff through training on that as well. We have, yep.
About, the current restrooms on the second and third floor. I think originally when the remodel were done for handicap accessibility, they're wider doors where wheelchairs can go through. So we could use the microphone, even though we know you have a lot of data. So I just wonder if there's another available handicap facilities for students in wheelchairs, because I don't know that.
So is the question how many handicapped accessible bathrooms we have, or is this about, so this is beyond gender, gender only you're thinking, or are you asking if the gender inclusive bathrooms that we're proposing are also handicap accessible? I would need to get the ADA specifics from Dave Spooner on that. I can definitely check on that and get back to you, though. Yep. I do recall there being a wide, there was opening in there. I know there was wide enough where we even talked about using some partitions and how that could look. So I do know that there is some space available in there. So again, I don't want to speculate about it, but I do know that it's a wider, bigger area. I just don't know specifically to the door question. That I'd have to learn more about.
Man, I think maybe the question is the intent of these washrooms is for anyone who wants to use them. Mm-hmm. So it doesn't matter who uses them; anyone can. So.
We do have a couple of lock sets in stock, and so here's a picture of one facing each direction. We had 2 different lock sets that we considered on how we could go about locking those doors. Because they're single use, there would be a lock on them, so we had a lot of discussion. These are the ones that Dave Spooner has available and will be able to put into the doors. So our request today is, in this informational presentation, is to gather some feedback from you on this and to seek support in moving forward with adding more single-stall bathrooms to improve gender inclusivity at Dunfield High School, and then continue to assess that at our other secondary sites, starting at East this fall, and then looking to our middle schools after that. Knowing that each site will have its own unique layouts, and each one will need an individual assessment to determine how we can best meet the needs of students.
Well, in my opinion, some is better than none, but I still think having a single bathroom on each floor and having it open to everybody is still going to create a problem, because more students that don't require a single-use bathroom will use it anyway, and so there still will end up having kids being late to class and that sort of stuff. I would much rather see a longer-term plan of creating bigger multi-stall bathrooms for students, because a single one isn't enough. but it's better than none.
Member Loeffler Kemp?
Kind of on that same line, when you were thinking about best practices, that is the ideal, is to do something like Johnson High School, right? But as you looked at what other schools have done, has this been kind of one of the models that they've taken, is kind of one on every floor?
I think it's really independent. It's very dependent on what that building already has, and some buildings were designed 30, 40, 50 years ago, and I think the older buildings, we see the more challenging that we find that to be. But yeah, opening up availability of restrooms for use like this, yes, I would agree that that's what I have seen as a practice. If there is a single-use bathroom available, if we can find a way to make that open to more students, then that has been a practice. And while Minnesota guidance doesn't tell us we have to do that, we think it's a best practice and best for our students, and that's why we want to bring it forward.
I ask another question. Okay, so I mean, I would love us to be a model for other school districts, like we've been on other things. But my other kind of question related to that is, now that you've assessed, for example, Denfeld, in terms of just the process for East, could it be a quicker process? I mean, I would like to speed that up and if we all agree to make these changes, to move it quicker at East as well. So we're meeting their needs. And then my last question is, you talked about education of community staff and students. It seems to me it would be really important that our people who are caring for these bathrooms, our engineers, our janitors especially, are supportive of this as well. So so everyone, when we talk about staff, is that everyone is educated. So, okay, thanks.
Thanks. I agree with what's been said, but I think that the superintendent emphasized that education is important, to know that everybody can use these. Otherwise, the stigma will still be there. And I think that the more that everyone uses them, the less stigma there will be. And that's important. But I agree that we need more. The Johnson model, put it that way, it looks nice, but I don't see how we can afford that at this point in time. But look forward to it and go faster, all of those things. But I think education is important for the students and everyone.
And so my question, too, I agree with the other members that I would hope that we could move a little quicker, even in middle school, where middle school is tough enough as it is. In fact, I almost think that we should be doing it at the middle school first, because that is such a harsh, sometimes, place for kids. So the more we could get out there and at least assess and come back, that would be great. This is great. Thank you for moving our district to the accountability and to doing that. The other question, too, is you say something about signage. So tell me a little bit about that.
Well, I can make just a few comments. There's not a universal choice for signage. Some places use the phrase unisex, some gender neutral, some all are welcome. There's very creative options, but yeah, I wouldn't say that there's a universal sign that you can reliably see in schools or other places for that matter. But I think it needs to be whatever word or words are chosen, words that are not going to cause brain freeze. Like, what does that mean? Because then some of the tapping of the brakes might happen, and undue opposition may be voiced.
Thank you. That answers too. And then would the committee of Ron and Dave and Jeff and Allison, is that continued, or will you add more? Who's going to be responsible for choosing the signage and education and all of that? And when would we be ready to go at the start of the school year at Denfeld? Since I do know those spaces, and you just would put the locks. Is that your plan? Is to have that ready?
We'll have to work with Dave on the timeline on that. It shouldn't be a very long turnaround, so I think it's something that we could get in place pretty quickly. In terms of, the speed of our assessments of other sites, yes, I think that can happen much quicker. I think each site will present its own opportunities and its own challenges, so each plan might be a little different in how that looks. We've already had some exploratory conversations about what that may look like at East, and we have talked to the principal a little bit about that as well, about what she saw, what the challenges may be there as well. So, but yes, I think we can do that, and our group will continue to have the conversations about this. I think we'll rely on facilities and their expertise, which would be Dave Spooner and our group, to help guide us through some of those signage issues and some timelines for what we could expect.
I want to voice support for any signage to try to avoid gender stereotypes. I would much prefer just saying a simple sign that says restroom. Avoid that altogether.
From my understanding, when we've had other presentations, and I don't mean to contradict you, Member Oswald, I just think what I remember is that the signage was an important piece of it being used by all. Okay.
Yes, and I think to just have the word restroom, when we reach that time, that will be a great time.
Any other questions that you have for us before moving forward?
Can I ask for your name again? I know I've met you. I know it, but I want to write it down too.
Kathy Herms.
Okay, yeah. Thanks, Kathy. Thank you so much for the presentation and
you have our support.
Thank you.
So thank you.
Yeah, and thank you very much. And I wish some of our other presenters could be here, and also many of the students and staff, administration that offered feedback on this to help us get to this point. So thank you to them as well. And thank you very much for being here today to present with me. I appreciate it.
So that we'll move back then to our informational items of the Assistant Superintendent's report.
Am I up again? All right. I cannot get into board book. It just has been spinning for it has been the entire time. So I apologize. All right. Thank you very much. Summer school. I have it up. Yep. I have a backup copy and a paper copy, but I can't get into the actual board book, so I'm not sure what's going on with that. Okay, summer school. So we had summer school. Lincoln Park hosted summer school this year. And Principal Glockley was over there helping there, and then Principal Norman at the ALC. Both summer schools went really well and received some positive feedback, which really kind of leads into one of my highlights I wanted to discuss was Navy Week. So both our Alternative Learning Center and our Summer School Career Recovery Program at Lincoln had Navy Week come out there. Really positive reports. We shared some information on that earlier, and it was really a positive experience. It was not a recruiting visit at all. It was about a sharing. It was very educational. I checked in with both principals about that throughout the process, and they were very pleased with that. The Navy Week also went out to the Key Zone and met with students there. And there were sailors there from the USS Minneapolis-St. Paul, the U.S. Naval Academy, and there was also some from the Naval History and Heritage Command Center, the USS Constitution. So lots of different folks around. I know there's a lot of community events as well, but they were engaged with their school, and the feedback was very positive about that experience. So really excited to see that. So summer school went well. They had a chance to incorporate some of the Navy Week things. I also want to point out that we had the Back to School Conference with the Minnesota Department of Education this last week. I was very impressed with the sessions. I was very pleased with some of them. They have been doing some work on bringing some of the different plans together. It's always a conversation about, we have all these different plans at the state level, and they've really been doing some work with coordinating that, and they've got some updated documents for comprehensive needs assessment at the district level, which is something really interesting. So we're talking with them about next steps with that and how we can maybe be a leader in that area in the state. So that was really exciting. They were really excited that we were so interested. I think our district team is really ready for that. So excited about that. Some great sessions on equity and just a little bit of everything else. And I think that I was really pleased over the last few years. I think this was one of my preferred ones. So I think that was a great time going down there. I also want to just give a shout out to our new principals. Principal Kazmierczak, he is the new principal at Lincoln Middle School. And so welcome to him. And then our former assistant principal at Lincoln Middle School, Jake Hinsala, is going to be the new principal at our residential sites. And so really happy to have both of them on board. They'll be great additions to our team. And then just a final shout out to Keyzone. We're getting through the end of summer. They just do huge things all summer. They do huge things all summer long and help our kids stay engaged, not just through a traditional daycare setting, but offering all sorts of activities and education to go along with that. And their staff have done a wonderful job. And in talking with some of them throughout the summer, some of the things they do just to support students is really above and beyond. And so just really appreciate all their work and want to recognize them for what they do. So that is the end of my report. Are there any questions?
Member Loeffler, Ken?
Yep, two quick things. With summer school, how many kids about participated again in summer school? Did you give that number?
I did not give that number, and I don't have it off the top of my head. I would have to get you an update on that
Just
one.
Curious, yeah, just curious. So I know some kids who participated, so just... and then my other question, it was great to read the background of the two new principals. It seemed like they bring a lot of principal experience with them. So thanks for getting that background information on them as well. And then the same thing with Keyzone. Does Keyzone run until right before school starts? Yeah, okay, yep. And they were at record capacity, I heard at most sites, right?
Everybody wants to be in Keyzone. It's a great program.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of, you can follow this up. So just for people watching too, and just a reminder to me as well, tell me a little bit about Keyzone. What it is it fee-based? Do they have transportation? What ages? What school districts have it? Do you know it?
Yep,
Can you help me with that?
Do you want to, we can tag team this if you want.
It can be a tag team here if you want.
I just wanted to note that Keyzone is a little bit different during the school year than it is during the summer.
Right.
So during the school year, it's an after-school program. It has some academic pieces to it. It's our partnership with the Y and community schools and some of our schools and other partners to make sure that our students have a safe place after school. Some of the students are fee-based, some are scholarship, some are on a sliding scale, depending on how their family, based on their family income. And then in the summer, it's more of an all-out program. They do lots of fun activities, indoors, outdoors. They have a focus on environmental science during the summer as well. They partner with UMD, their environmental science department, and lots of other community partners that come in, and they do field trips and activities, and they have breakfast and lunch, and it runs all day.
At all schools?
No, it's not at all schools. And Jeff, can you remember which sites it is this year?
Oh, let me pull it up quick. I think I can pull it up.
It changes from year to year, but there's 2 or 3 sites.
And do we transport students?
We do not transport students unless there's special arrangements.
But it is a full day. Is it from 7 to 6, I think?
There's families can choose how much they're there. So some are there all day, every day, and others are there maybe a few days a week or for a few hours a week, depending on what the family needs are.
I know Lester Park is one of the sites.
And age, what are the ages of Key Zone students?
K through 5.
Elementary. K-5.
Okay. You know, it's just more, I can look that up too, so certainly. But I think it's interesting sometimes when we have reports that people listening maybe don't understand Key Zone, and I'm not so sure we've had a presentation in my 2 years from Key Zone. You know, we've met so many of our programs and curriculum and staff at these meetings, but I'm not so sure Key Zone has ever been here.
Usually Jay from Community Ed is part of those presentations, so I'm sure.
I will say that where we have the summer programs is based on the families that sign up, where the majority of them are from. Some of them opt to travel to another school where the programming is.
Okay. Any other questions?
No, I just wanted to add both Jay as well as Gail are responsible for the partnerships that we have with Key Zone. Okay. Do you know the school sites?
All I was going to do is I emailed you our website with the information about Key Zone, so a lot of your questions that you're having are on there so that you can see for yourselves. Thank you.
I will say, Member Lofold and the other board members, I hear lots of support from parents. At my National Night Out party, we have a lot of families that go to the Lester Park site, and just great support for that we offer it through the schools.
Okay, so I have it here. So back in February, we sent out a note and the results of a survey. We surveyed and said, what are your choices? The choices were Congdon, Lester Park, Lowell, Key Zone Outdoors, MacArthur, and Piedmont. And they asked them to rate them 1 through 5, and they said they would take the top 4, and Congdon, Lester Park, Lowell, Key Zone Outdoors, and Lower MacArthur were the chosen sites for the year. So, and for the cost of the program, it was $30 per child, waived for families who are currently using the school year program, daily rate of $39 per child, closed on the 4th, and there's a 20-day minimum.
Moving right along then, if I don't see any questions, thank you, Assistant Superintendent. And our next informational is from our Director of Curriculum and Instructions.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
First up this evening is staff development. You've heard me give updates on this for several months now, and that's because this process takes a good portion of the year. As soon as we stop planning and implementing one, we're collecting feedback and then planning for the next one, so it's a long process. But it is fast approaching. We have new teacher orientation on August 26th, so I think that's just 2 weeks from now. And so that will be a whole host of different activities, from union orientation to benefits to teaching and learning pieces, all kinds of different things. They're going to get a little bit of everything on that day. Prior to our all-staff welcome back, which is on the 27th. Something different this year that we had talked about previously, but just a reminder, we will not be all in one site for this day. We're going to be dispersed throughout the district. We will have some common learning regarding ALICE and then self-reflection training. Those will be common for all staff throughout, but we will be in various different locations. However, similar to last year, if you are interested in coming and being a greeter, we will have sign-up tables and the morning welcome for non-certified staff at Ordine East. So if that, I know several of you did that last year, so if you are interested in doing that, just let me or Joan know and we'll be happy to get you set up. And the letter for that should be going out today. It went to the printer Friday, and I think it was going out to mail this morning, so people should be getting those shortly. And then the remainder of the day, just a reminder, is going to be building directed. And so what that means is the buildings are providing different learning opportunities centered around either welcome activities or related to their continuous improvement teams planning. So it's a little bit different everywhere, but related to those plans individual to each building. Then, next up, curriculum. Staff are just starting to come back, some of them. Others won't be back for several weeks yet. So it's kind of definitely a transition month for us. We've got lots of shipments going out to different sites as staff change or as needs at different grade levels change. You'll see a lot of second grade materials going out because our first graders last year, that was a very large class size, so just kind of shifts things people don't really think about maybe sometimes, but we'll need more second grade textbooks in schools this year than last year, that kind of thing. So there's an adjustment that happens. And then just getting things ready for staff coming. So that's been basically the focus this month. Another piece that's something you've heard about before is ELA text choice. So we talked a lot last year about 9th grade, and then 11th grade was looking at replacing one of the selections, one of the choice reads. So last year they chose from, instead of 6 texts, they chose from 5.
Right.
And so we're looking to replace that 6th. And they have it down to 3, and a variety of people have been reading over the summer, and so the 3 finalists are listed there for you, and there's links to bios for the authors and brief summaries. I know some of you read the last selection, so they're there for your information. And then also they'll be meeting later this month to start the narrowing down process. So you should have more information about that in the next couple months. Any questions?
Member Oswald.
I have 2 questions. First, what time is the Ordine East thing? That if we showed up to volunteer, what time should we be there?
I will have my assistant get back to you with specifics on that.
Perfect. Okay, and then I was part of a discussion with the NAACP Education Committee meeting where they discussed the book choices, and there was a resounding, ugh, we have to pick one, which is unfortunate. There's a lot of, well, if I have to pick one, but I really don't want to pick one. And so I don't know if you're prepared for that kind of feedback or if you've heard that from more than just the few sources on the education committee. But that was definitely something that really kind of took the wind out of people, I guess is the best way to put it. And they're hoping that there might be some revisions. And I don't know if that's something that you're considering or not. But that's the feedback I got and that I'm sharing.
So one of the things I can speak to in general that I've learned throughout this process is that it is impossible to make everyone happy when choosing one text. And we've had a wide variety of feedback from many texts. At this point, we're looking at putting something in place for this school year. So we're not looking to switch out titles at this point, and are going to choose one of the 3. Absolutely.
I look forward to reading these, even maybe this weekend, so I'll have some time. But I just want to make sure, I kind of honor the work our staff did in reading through them, and then making sure they have the time to pull together the curriculum they want to do around them, and
Absolutely.
And will they have some time together to either throughout the year or whatever to kind of share ideas for curriculum, best practices around these books, that kind of thing?
Yeah, absolutely. So our reading specialists will be leading professional development around that. They're going to be designing a common unit with a couple of key common elements and then flexibility within that. And then there is also follow-up with the choice from last year's Spirit Car. There's additional PD planned for that as well, recognizing that things are hard to implement the first time. So just to follow up, there will be multiple opportunities for that.
Seeing no other questions, I think that will conclude our report. Thank you, Gail. So we can move on now to our action items. So I think I'm going to go back to Assistant Superintendent for Policy 521, Student Disability Non-Discrimination Revision.
Yeah, so as part of our Office of Civil Rights audit, we've had the opportunity to update our policies, and this one will actually connect into some of the HR policies that we've seen. After some discussion with the Office of Civil Rights and the Minnesota Department of Education person who audits this, we are coming forward with Policy 521. We have made some changes to that, and you can see those changes I believe they're marked in red. Mine is in faded ink on my copy here, since I can't get in. Similar to those policies, you'll see us office listing the U.S. Department of Education and the Ministry of Human Rights, so making sure that we're noting those people, and then we're referencing District Policy 103 here, and this is the major change, I think, in terms of our 504 grievance procedures. We have 4 different policies now that reference one policy, which is 103, and how to go through that process. There was a form on here, excuse me, the Student Disability Discrimination Grievance Report, and that was attached to the policy in the past. We are striking that here, and we're moving over to 103 because it gets a little wonky if you've got all these things in different sections. We're saying that if there's something, if any of these policies, you go to this policy and this is where it lists how to go ahead and do that. So we've referenced it in this policy, and HR has also referenced it in theirs. So, and that's the way the language reads in the policy, is to reflect that. So that's probably the most significant change in that. And then our part of the audit was also to update our family student handbook to reflect that. So we've made sure that our family student handbook speaks to this. Our policies should all link up. It was really bringing a lot of different things together to just kind of cross-coordinate. But we feel like we have it pretty well, and 521 is the 504 section of that. Are there any questions about this policy first reading?
Member Oswald.
A couple questions. You just referenced that the family student handbook needs to be updated. Has it been updated to reflect this change already, even though it's not passed, being that they're just going out now?
We took out the grievance procedures out of the family handbook, and that's what our Office of Civil Rights suggested that we did, yes.
Okay, so whether or not we pass this as it stands, it's already changed?
Well, we still have our existing policy that's in place, so we still have the grievance procedures still exist as they have until we go through a second reading, and upon board approval, of course, then we'd make the switch. But we didn't want to create confusion in the family student handbook where we outlined a different grievance procedure, and then if we did end up passing this policy, then we wouldn't want to confuse families with that. So it does still exist. They still can follow the old way of doing it, yes.
And then my next question is how, when a complaint is made and processed, and I believe it goes through your office, how is it sorted out to be discrimination versus other complaints? And how are discrimination complaints dealt with separately from other complaints, being that there are different laws that are attached to different complaints?
So is your question that we have these different policies all referencing policy 103?
My question is how are discrimination complaints going to be handled under policy 103? Being that discrimination complaints are protected by federal law and that kind of stuff. They have a lot of different laws attached to them.
Yeah, so I'd want to get Tim in here for that piece because he has policy 103. I don't have that copy in front of me right now, but we have had some conversations about what that process would be, and is it a single form, for example, that can encompass all, or does it need to be different things? But 103 is going to be the holding cell for all those different, or that one document.
So are we going to revisit 103 then to try to decide what kind of form?
I believe it's on the agenda for Wednesday,
okay.
I recall, yes. So,
okay. Thank you.
Yep. But I believe that we're moving towards one form just for simplicity purposes, that if we can get it done with one form, that seems to make the most sense, and that's kind of how the policy's read. So, and there's also language in here that says that if you do have a complaint, you can go directly to the Office of Civil Rights, and that was something that they were very adamant about us noting, that you can skip the school district process.
And so I read this policy as with that information attached to the bottom of I'm going to tell you I have a complaint, but I'm going to go to these bigger pieces, and I would much rather stress somehow that we want to take care of it before you have to go to the state or the federal government. And I believe the way I read this is that it leads the reader to say I'm going to the state before you get a chance to resolve it. I don't see it as very welcoming that we want to work with people that have problems. I don't want to have to deal more with the state and federal people. I'd much rather, and it's much simpler to handle any kind of grievance with us as fast as we can, and as quickly as we can, and that's not a quick process with state.
They were
and federal
pretty
people.
explicit in making us add some of that language in certain areas. In E, we really try to encourage people by saying go to 103, and 103 really spells out going more to the federal government, but we have to list those part of our audit in there. So
I get that, but I wish we could put in some language in there saying, you know, like, please let us try to help first. You know, obviously something much more professional than that, but that, you know, we're going to work with you to try to resolve the complaints, and should you not be satisfied, maybe, you know, you could have these other options also.
we'd have to check with the OCR if we can add any of that language. I can follow up with them if the board wishes to do that. That was one of those where they were pretty, in every document that we had. Well, we definitely want to encourage people to go through an internal process, and then we want people to do that. We have to make sure we balance that with what they say. So I can look into that if that's what the board would like, and come back with some language if they allow us to do that.
Well, I'm one person, and I'm not suggesting necessarily changing E, but maybe moving E to F and creating a new E that says, you know, we will do our best to work through any issues you may have. You know, something to be reassuring to the reader that we care and that, you know, we want to work things out.
One thing we did under coordinator, if I'm not sure, for me it's on the next pages, we did strike language about well, actually I guess it doesn't. We do just reference that you go to the assistant superintendent's office. So, but yeah, we can take a look at that. Yeah,
well, that would be a great place to add just some language too. But I am just one board member. I don't know what my other board members feel about that.
Superintendent Granson?
I was just looking at policy 103 that you will be considering on Wednesday. It has very similar language, but it's much longer. So I think we can continue the conversation on Wednesday.
I'm not sure I understand Member Oswald's inquiries, but in a way, I don't know if you see this the way I do, Member Oswald, but that when it says under purpose, and it says the purpose, at least 521, the purpose of this policy is to protect students with disabilities, even just that first phrase that says we want to protect our students is kind of a nice way of showing that we want to work through it. I don't know. And that there's that line between, you know, needing to have formal, like we understand that we want to solve it before you'd ever have to go to this. But if you have to go to this. So is your question that we really don't share with our families and our staff and students that we have a policy of trying to solve problems now? Okay.
My question is, when I read this policy as a parent who has had issues at times, I read that as saying, go to these federal agencies or state agencies with your complaint. I don't read it as in, like, you know, go to the superintendent's office and we'll try to work it out. And that's where I'm trying to make it user-friendly in my conversation of reading it. I want parents to be able to read it and have some confidence that we're going to try our best to resolve your complaint before you have to go any further.
Yeah, I'll make sure I look, and I made a note to call down there and see what we can do. Some of the language we receive specifically from them, so I can ask if there's ways to soften that, to make it, to try to say, hey, we really want to work with you on this, and see if there's a way to dress it up. Any other questions or comments on policy 521?
My only comment is that I appreciated that you did follow up on some of the other thoughts on the layout of the reporting form and that, and then came back to us. So thank you for doing that extra step as well.
Okay, so that ends our conversation on policy 521. That's really the meat of our meeting today, right? 521 is on the first reading, so we can have more input on it. We just have a resolution on grants, and we have diplomas. So I think unless there's some questions about anything, or Assistant Superintendent, anything else to add?
Nope, that's all I have for today.
Okay, thanks for coming. Thanks for a meeting. We're adjourned.
Cool, thank you.